Hi.
Is that you?
Yeah, can you see me?
I can see like the corner of your face, but that's okay.
Okay. How's that?
Oh, that's better. I can see your whole
Okay.
face there. Oh, well, I'm glad to hear from you after all this time.
I know, right?
Yeah. And I love the chance to record you because people are always asking me about you because you're in the book, you know?
Hmm.
And so I guess, for the people that don't know, I mean, I guess we should start at the very beginning. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay. So let's start with you're a kid and what happened?
I'm a kid or my kid?
No, when you were young.
Oh, okay. Well, when I was young, my dad was a practicing alcoholic, and I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mother was actually an alcoholic too, but she didn't drink that much, so I don't think she was one back then, but she became one. And
Mm,
our house was very hostile, a lot of arguing. My dad would hit us with a belt, and
sounds like a typical alcoholic childhood. Yeah.
yes, typical alcoholic childhood. And one time I remember he hit me, and the belt buckle hit my on the top of the head, and all this blood came gushing out, and I had to get like all these stitches. And
How
then
old
when
were
I
you?
went, 15 or 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I went to the hospital, and they asked me what happened, and I said I hit my head against the radiator, and they looked at me and they said, "Are you sure?"
So you were covering even at a young age for
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
I was covering at a young age, and well, I didn't. They didn't say anything, so their silence made me lie. I mean,
Mm,
they could have spoken up. They were right there, and
right.
so I became very much of an alcoholic from that point on.
Oh,
I
wait. So after that, though, you started drinking even after you were seeing that? How did that
Mhm.
happen?
I actually was drinking before then, but I was drinking a lot more after that happened.
Mm,
Kind of set off the wheels to spin, so to speak. And you know, I I was a functioning alcoholic for a long time, and then I became a dope addict too. And
mm.
so all bets were off. Um, I started working as a dancer when I was 19 years old, or
Wow.
20 years old actually.
Okay.
And I just remember, that was the best way to make money so I could get my dope. And I got a lot of free drinks while I was there.
Wow.
So it was like the best place to be if you, if you're, in the sex industry and also, an addict as well.
Right.
Um, so I did that for a long time. And then I met my soon to be husband at, it was called Cindy's a Go Go.
What a
I
name.
I know, right? Cindy's a
Yep.
go-go. And so I met him, and then when I met him, I got arrested, and so it helped me to get sober. So when I got out, I was sober, and I stayed sober for like 4 years. And
Really?
then yeah,
What do you think happened? Because here you are on this downward slope, and then all of a sudden nothing for 4 years. I mean, what happened there?
well, I got divorced, and
Do
I
you think it
just
was the
really
marriage or the
in
divorce
my
that did it?
um I don't know. It was partially because of and I was just so depressed, at that time.
Mm,
And I think it had to do with the divorce. Um, but it mainly had to do with me being an addict. I mean, that was my
right.
solution. And so I was in my early 30s at that time, and well, late 20s, early 30s. And that's when I started uh, I got when I got sober in between that time, I started Prostitutes Anonymous in San Diego, and that's
That's
where I
right.
met. That's
She
where I met.
started the very first meeting down in San Diego.
Yes.
But what brought you into PA though? I mean, it sounded like you were going through a divorce. you're going to the bottom with the addiction, but what made you decide to start a PA meeting?
Because I knew that that was an area in my life that I didn't have control over. I was still spiritually sick in that area, and I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I had to do something, you know.
Right.
So I started PA, but then I relapsed again. I was just a chronic relapser for 22 years. I was in and out of the program, and
What do you think the reservation was?
it's just that I just didn't get it. I just kept thinking, oh, I'm not that bad.
Oh,
and
it's funny what we
like,
tell ourselves, right?
right, exactly.
Okay.
And so, so then when I hit rock bottom, really rock bottom,
And what was
um,
that like?
well, I was staying with this guy the man of my dreams, who looked like he just escaped from Pelican Bay.
Okay.
And I walked back into the house after getting arrested, and he looked at me and he said, "You're no one." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, watch no one leave." So I left,
Hmm.
and I ran into a friend of mine who was in the program, and he looked at me and he said, "Time for rehab." And I said, "Yes, it's time for rehab."
Mm.
And that was very powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
so I went into a 28-day program, and I was really ready to be sober at that point. I just knew that I didn't have anything else in me. And so then I decided to go to a recovery home, and I stayed there for 6 months, and I got a job. I told God, I'll take any kind of job. I'll be a bagger at a grocery store. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I got a job as a bagger at a grocery store.
He gave you right what you asked for,
I
right?
know, right? And
Okay.
And so I told myself I was going to keep that job for at least a year. And I kept that job for a year. And while I was there, I got promoted to the bread girl. So I put out all the bread and went to the bakery and put out all the stuff at the bakery. And then I said, well, I want to do something with my life. I want to, do my own business. And I was like, well, what should I do, God? And God's like, well, what are you good at? I said, well, I'm good at cleaning. I know that. And so I started a cleaning business. And
Hmm.
I would go into meetings, and when they'd ask for non-AA announcement, I'd say, I'm Sharon, I'm an alcoholic, and I have a cleaning business. I give very good rates, and I'm very good at what I do. So that started my business, and I held that for 10 years. And then I decided, I was sober, and I decided, it's time to go back to school. And so in 2005, I enrolled in Palomar, and then I did that. Um, Not 2005, 2003. I went to Palomar, and then in 2007, I got accepted to Chico State, and so we moved from Southern California to Northern California. I got my degree in social work. I started working, and that where I was living on a farm, and it was really nice, but there was absolutely nothing to do. And so I was like, I want to get back to San Diego. We had bought a house before that, my husband and I, and we kept the house and we rented it, so we had a place to move into when we got back. But when we got back, the house was in a complete disarray. The
Mm.
carpet was all chewed up from a dog. There was cockroaches. The sliding glass mirrored closets were all cracked and broken. There was like 4 or 5 washer and dryers out in the backyard. I'm like, what are they doing? A laundry service? And so we had a lot to do when I came back. We stayed in a hotel until we could, fix up some of it. And and that's I started. Um, I applied for social work jobs, and before I actually applied for one before I left Northern California in 2007,
Mhm.
and not 2007, in 2011, and I got a job, and it was at a nursing home as a social worker. And what happened um, was the person that hired me went off to go somewhere else, and so there was a different person in charge. And she said, I'm rescinding the offer. So she
Mm.
rescinded the offer, which probably was the best thing that ever happened to me because I didn't have to go into work I had already worked in a nursing home in Northern California, and it's very depressing. You know,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
really depressing. So then I got a job um, uh, at Rachel's Women's Center at a homeless shelter, and I worked there for 6 months, and then I got a job as a dialysis social worker, and I really liked that field, and I stayed in that job for a year, and then there was another one that opened up in because I was working in Chula Vista, so it was like over an hour to drive. So I found
Mhm.
this job that was closer to me, and I've been working it there ever since. Almost 10 years now. I've been working at this dialysis, the same job, and that's like the longest legal job that I've ever had.
I was going to say
And,
that's amazing for someone with our background.
okay,
You know?
exactly. And so, I knew that. I wanted to stay sober, but not only did I want to stay sober, I wanted to have a program, you know.
Hmm.
And so, right now I have a really good sponsor, and we're going through the steps again. And currently I'm on step 10. I've been
Hmm.
procrastinating, so I have to admit it so that maybe I'll get on the ball with that one. But I'm doing it out of a book. It's not AA approved, but it's called 12 Steps a Way Out, and each step has you write out a whole bunch of stuff, and you get really cleansed, I'll say, so to speak. That's what it's been with my experience, is that um, I feel like um, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like I'm still on the road to recovery, and that there's so
Mm.
much more to learn about myself and about this world. Um,
And you've got like decades now of sobriety
yeah,
time,
I've been
right?
sober for 28 years now.
Yeah, and I know, you still feel like you're still new in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think that's good. I think that's because we really want more for ourselves and more for others. And
Hmm.
one thing I forgot to mention was um, I really wanted to be a foster mother, but what happened was because of my record, I couldn't be one. But what happened was is I met this girl in college named Rachel, and her sister-in-law was using and drinking and had lost her kid to the system. And so, they asked me because I was actually interning at CPS, and they said, that I said that I wanted to take care of her little girl, and they said, well, you know what you can do is you don't have to do foster care. You can do what's called kinship, and that means an extended family member, daughter. And I remember when I told her that she was adopted, she was like 4 years old. And I
Hmm.
told her, I said, well, mommy couldn't have any babies. And I prayed and I prayed, and there you were. And she looked at me and said, I prayed too, mommy. And that just got me so choked up when she said that. Um, I knew that it was the right fit for us. And now
Hmm.
she's 15. So she's at
Wow.
that age where she's being rebellious. And, I told her, I said, what I want for you is just not to ever drink or smoke or do drugs. Those are the things, that's the main things I want you to do. And I'd like for you to go to college, and if you do go to college, you don't have to pay rent. But if you don't go to college, you have to pay rent because I figure that'll motivate her to want to go
Hmm.
to college. And,
Right.
I wasn't so motivated when I got out of high school. I wasn't motivated at all.
Hmm.
I just thought college was for really smart people. And I found out that wasn't true, that you just had to work hard and to be committed and dedicated to what your major was. And
Hmm.
how I picked my major was I was a friend of mine did social work, and I said, you know what, I like her, and I think social work would be a good fit for me. And so because somebody in the program was a social worker, I became a social worker too, and it's the best fit for me that I've ever
Hmm.
had, and I love where I work now. I work 4 days in Vista, and I live in San Marcos, and it takes me exactly 10 minutes to get there. So
Oh,
it's
good.
it's really a good deal. And I'm working. one day out of the week in San Diego, which is about a 45-minute drive. But I work Monday through Thursday at my regular clinic, my home clinic, and one day a week I work at uh, San Diego. And as soon as they find a social worker, I don't have to do that anymore. And then I'll only have a 4-day work week. I'll be working Monday through Thursday. So I'll have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, which is good because, I'm going to be 66 next month and they need to
Wow.
start slowing down on work and, you know, have another part of my life, another chapter of my life take place, so to speak, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm sober now. I go to meetings. I go mostly on the weekends. I go,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I go to two meetings on Saturday, and I go to one meeting on Sunday. But the it's all the same meeting and the same people. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I get to know these people. One of them is a women's meeting, which is really good. It's a small group,
Mm-hmm.
um, but it's really good. It's got a lot of people who have longevity in the program,
Mm-hmm.
and some newcomers too. Um, just recently, unfortunately, one of our girls went back out and died of an overdose, and that just really put it into perspective for me. Like, I am it could happen, as long if I
Mm-hmm.
don't stick to the program, it could easily happen. So, I continue to go to my meetings and I continue to work a program. I continue to have a sponsor, somebody that I'm accountable for, and somebody who has what I want, and I'm willing to go to any lengths to get it. The person I have has 35 years of sobriety, and
Mm-hmm.
she's got a really good hold of the program, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I do one of the things I do is I do a gratitude list. So I write that I send it to like 6 or 7 other women in the program, and they send me back their gratitude list too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a really good thing to keep things in proper perspective of everything that I have because now I'm a homeowner. I've been married for 21 years. I have a daughter that I always wanted, and I'm in a career that I want to be in. So I mean, life couldn't get much better.
All that's miraculous where you came from, you know?
Yes,
Now, does he know all about your past? How did
yes, he
that
does.
go? And
Well,
and
I'll tell you, let me tell you what happened was when we met on Match.com. And then about 3 or 4 months into the relationship, we knew that we wanted to get married. And I told him, I finally said to him, I said, well, you need to know that I'm a recovering alcoholic. And he said, oh, no, I don't know if that's going to work. And I said, well, I don't blame you. You go ahead and take your time to think about this. But let me tell you, my days of drinking and using are over one day at a time. And
mm-hmm.
so he heard that and he said, you know what? I think that this can work. And so we wound up getting married and we've been together ever since, you know. But telling somebody that you're in the program, he had been with a woman who was in the program. She was also anorexic. So she was
Mm-hmm.
practicing. So he didn't really have a good um, uh, perspective on what an alcoholic who's recovering is like. And when we were in Northern California, we started the very first Al-Anon group, um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was good. It was good. Unfortunately, when we left, I guess it disbanded. But we had that for 10 years in common. My husband and I both went to that Al Anon meeting. My husband doesn't go to meetings anymore, but you know what? He doesn't have to. Um,
Right.
I do, you know. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. I want to. Um, so, yeah, so that's what it's been like for me. And I feel like I have a strong program. I'm sponsoring 2 girls now. And I do service when I'm at, like I was asked to lead a meeting today, and I'm asked leading 2 meetings today, and
Mm-hmm.
I never say no to an AA or an NA request. That's what I was taught in the beginning, and that's what I've always done.
That's one of the reasons you're still here.
That's right. That's right. That's the very reason I'm still here is because we're selfish and self-centered, and in order to get out of that we have to do service. on a much bigger level than the normal person would.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, and I like doing service. I think that's why it's been easy for me um, to stay sober is because I continue to do service. I don't let that slide. Um, and I think the best thing I do, the best part of service I do is sponsorship, because people have heard my story and they know what I've been through, and they figure, well, if she can stay sober, I can stay sober.
Right.
If I can stay sober, anybody can stay sober, you know?
Because I don't think people appreciate that for somebody like me and you, um, it's not just about like the drugs or the alcohol. It's not even just about the sex work, for us.
Right.
It seems to be a whole big ball of wax, of
Yes.
of other things, problems with um even eating healthy, problems with
Right.
taking care of ourselves, problems with any kind of stability. I mean,
Hmm.
these are all things that do eventually pull someone back into sex work. Is a lot of these things with inability to even maintain relationships, kind
Right.
of a thing.
Right.
So it's not like so simple as just what do they call it? Put the plug in the jug. It's just not that simple for
No, it's
us.
definitely not. It's definitely not that simple because I remember when I was sober for those 4 years that I would go back to where I used to work as a sex worker, and that kind of kicked it off for me, like don't go back to your old haunts, whatever you do. I mean, because it drug me back into that the life again.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, um, I'm just fortunate that I never died. I got down to about 88 pounds, and I
Mm.
was hallucinating that there were rats in my hair, and I pulled out every stitch of hair on one side of my head, but I
Mm.
still thought I looked good.
Ah, the insanity. I love the insanity. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I
Yeah,
mean. Yeah, but it's
exactly.
not that simple for us. Here you are at 88 pounds, your hair pulling out, and you still think you look good. Like
Still
I've
think you
had,
look good.
I've had conversations with people like that.
I know, right?
You
And
know?
so, yeah. So, fortunately, like I said, I stayed alive and was able to finally get sober. Um, both of my parents got sober. My mom died with 8 years of sobriety, and my dad died with 50 years of sobriety. So,
Wow.
and my sister's in the program. And just recently, she admitted that she didn't have as much time as she did because she smoked pot because she thought it was okay. But now she comes to realize, she can't hide and do that. So instead of 14 years, she now has 4 years of sobriety. So I was really proud of her that she admitted that. I told her, I bet it was so hard to do. And she goes, it really was. Um,
Well,
but I'm glad she did. And I keep in touch with her, and I keep in touch with my brothers. One of my brothers lives locally in Claremont. It's like about a 20 or 30-minute drive. And my other brother lives in Orange County, and my sister is now living in Mexico. So,
mm,
yeah, she likes living there, and she's an artist, so she sells paintings and does things like that to keep herself, um, self-supporting for her own contributions.
mm-hmm.
And I'm having a party this coming June for my birthday. I invited you, didn't I, Jody?
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna try to make
Okay.
that.
Okay. Um, anyway, so my brothers and will be there, and I get to have a good relationship with my family now. I talk to every single one of people in my family, and that's not the case with my brother and my sister. They don't speak anymore,
Mm.
unfortunately. But I chose to not go that route. I wanted to have a relationship with my siblings. One of my brothers died when he was like 53. He died of lung cancer, and he
Oh
was
my God.
schizophrenic. So it was kind of good that he died. I don't like to say it like that, but he didn't have much of a life. He was
No, I
living
understand.
he was living
Yeah.
in a board and care, and he actually did quit smoking cigarettes a year before he died, but it was too late. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so he died because of smoking. Um, and I remember all of us were at the hospital, and I said, let's get in a circle and because he was on life support, I said,
hmm
and let's talk about what, the best thing we had about our relationship with my brother. And we did that. And I think we became closer as a family because of that. Um, and I was able to, accept the fact that, you know what, I have one less sibling. And Richard actually lived with me in the very beginning of my sobriety. Um, and I had to when my husband and I got married and moved in, he was still living with us, but I had to have him not live with us because he was jealous of the relationship with my
hmm
husband, and I felt like that could tear us apart. So I had to make the decision of having him not live with us. And I told him, I said, "Well, you want to go back east, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah." And so got him a ticket to go back east. Unfortunately, he didn't have a support system back there that was in touch with him. My relatives wouldn't help; they were just a bunch of idiots. Um, so he moved back and he asked if he could stay with me. I said, "You can stay with me, and we have to find a board and care for you to live in." And he said that was fine. So I let him stay with me for a little bit and found him a place to live. And so he's lived in he lived in the board and care ever after that. And I remember prior to that, I was writing to the government why he should have, because he got denied Social Security, why
Mm.
he should have Social Security. I said his best friend is a shell in the backyard who he talks to. I don't
Yeah.
think I think that's proof right there and then. And I explained to them. So then he did wind up getting Social Security so he could pay for his own room and board at a board and
hmm
care. So that worked out good.
Now, what
Um,
about, I would think one of the most difficult things for you to work on would have been the relationship with your mother, because so many of us, have a real deep, long-term problem with our mothers, you
oh
know?
yeah, oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I just remember when I was out there drinking and using, so was she, and I lived with her. And I remember I saw
Oh,
this
that must have
place.
been fun, both of you using. Okay.
I know, right? We're both in relapse mode. And I remember looking at this house and I said, "Oh, it's only $399. It's a move-in special. I wish I had the money." And she said, "Well, I can give it to you." I said, "No, Mom, I don't want you to do that." And she goes, "Okay, well, let's pray." And so we prayed. The very next day, I got a check in the mail for $399. Unbelievable. It's a true story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got that place to live, and then I started dancing again and doing all the things that I did when I was using. And my mom proudly told her friends that I was a dancer. It was like, "Okay, Mom, please don't tell anybody else, okay?"
Right.
Um, and I promptly got sober after about 6 years. I relapsed for about 6 or 7 years, and I finally did wind up getting sober again. And it was because the life that I was living in, I just never fit in. I never fit
Mm-hmm.
in when I was out there drinking and using. Never, even with the people who were drinking and using with me, I just wasn't part of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's what I've come to find is my people in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when I can get to, I haven't been to a sex anonymous, sexual workers anonymous meeting in
Mm-hmm.
forever. Um, but I'm glad that we kept in touch and, that I could, because you were the one who helped me turn in my life of, you know, that I really had to admit that I wasn't just an alcoholic, but I was a sex workaholic. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a sex addict. People get that confused.
No, absolutely different. Yep.
Absolutely different. And so you were the one who helped me when I to reach my bottom. I healed that part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after that, I never prostituted again. I did relapse on drugs and alcohol. Um, I mean, but I did dance, but I didn't go back into prostitution like I did before.
It could have
So,
been so much worse. I mean, and what I'm hearing out there,
Could
it
have
could
been
have been
so
so
much
much worse
worse.
if you went back. I mean, we're going to be starting up a lot of meetings where, thanks to Zoom, I'll be going right into those, 28-day programs where when they're right where you are when you hit bottom. They're in a program, they've lost everything, they've hit total rock bottom, and they're all right there. And that's what they need to hear from us is, no, it's not just a matter of just, not using. There's so much more that we have to do to rebuild our lives when we come into
So much
recovery,
more. So much more.
you
So
know?
much more. You really have to have that real rock bottom. For me, I had to have a real rock bottom, but in the end, I was homeless. Um, I didn't, I remember sleeping in garages when it was really cold outside. I don't know even know how I slept, but I did. And like
Well,
getting a hotel was luxurious.
but it sounds like when you were ready, God was there to, give you everything you needed to get back on your feet.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And he always took care of me, especially when I was out there drinking and using and working in the sex industry. You know, um,
Hmm.
like you said, we have to do the program on a much deeper level because the core issues that we have um, date back to our family,
Hmm.
and I just remember, my mom when I was living with her, she would go back and forth. She was like, "You're not my daughter," and blah 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 blah, and I was like, "God, mom, shut up," you know. And you know, um, she got sober, and then I got sober shortly after that.
Hmm.
So I got to have her in my life as a sober person of Alcoholics Anonymous. When
Hmm.
I came in, she had 4 years of sobriety, and we became close. And then I had the mom that I always wanted to have. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, and she died really young. She was only 67 years old when she died. Um, and she died from smoking too, because she broke her hip. She went into the hospital and she never came out. She went into rehab, and it was really hard on her
Hmm.
to be there in rehab. But I came to visit her quite a bit, and we still maintained that relationship. I remember when she was in the hospital, she was still smoking cigarettes, and she said, "Sharon, you've got to do this for me." And I'm like, "Oh, what do I have to do for you?" And she said, "You have to bring me a cigarette and a lighter." I said, "I can't do that, Mom. You're in the hospital." She goes, "Please, you're the only one who will do it." And I said,
Hmm.
"Okay." Okay, Mom. So I brought her a cigarette. She lit it up. I told her, go in the bathroom, take 4 quick drags, and then flush it down. And what does she do? She comes waltzing out of the bathroom, looking like Betty Grable, taking, ah, and the nurses come bombing in. What are you doing? You're smoking. Oh my God. And they continue to um, yell at us for like 10 minutes. And I said, okay, okay, we know we did the wrong thing. We're very sorry. It won't happen again. And I told my mom, I said, see, Mom, I said, what do you think about that? She goes, bunch of bitches.
Listen, I
So that
know
was like the
how
last
our
memory
addiction
of,
takes form, even with the cigarettes, because like my mom was up to 4 packs a day. And then I'll never forget, I got a call
oh,
from,
wow.
the ER. She had come in, they thought she was having a heart attack. And what had happened was she had eaten two chocolate tiramisus and smoked so much that literally she threw herself into a heart attack between the chocolate and the tobacco. And I had never seen anybody that had thrown
Oh,
themselves into a
wow.
heart attack over chocolate and tobacco. And then
Oh,
I'm
my
not kidding.
God.
The minute they got her stabilized, she's sneaking out in the back parking lot to have another cigarette. I'm just staring at her going, my
Right?
God, the insanity of this thing, you know?
The insanity. Yeah. But we
Yeah.
can't stop until we're ready. I'm fortunate that when I had 10 months of sobriety, I quit smoking.
Oh,
And
good for
people were
you.
like, you shouldn't quit smoking now. I was like, I have to. I can't stand it tasting like a clean ashtray when I brush my teeth, you know? And just didn't, just wanted to get out of that life all the way out, you know. And so now my problem is eating, of course. We have to have something. So eating is like I eat sugar at night, which I shouldn't do, but
Listen, if that's
I
the
do.
worst way we act out, at least we're not going to go to jail over it or kill anybody, right?
Right? They always told me nobody ever got arrested for fat driving. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's for sure.
Hmm.
So, but life is good, you know, and I have a good life because of the program and all the programs that I went to that I was open to go to, you know, to start Prostitutes Anonymous. And you saw what it was like in my town. They were not very friendly about us being there. You went to
Oh,
that meeting
God.
with me, remember?
Yeah.
And the cops were like, you know, they weren't kind at all. But I
Mm-mm.
tried, you know,
Yeah. Well,
I tried.
that's been honestly the big difference with PA versus AA or even Sexaholics Anonymous is that we're dealing with something um, that is so built into our economy, really, and our
Yeah.
culture, and that you would think we would get more support for what we're doing, you
You
know?
would think.
You would
Yeah.
think. But, we're getting hostility from the police, not only for many reasons, like, they make a lot of money off arresting us, but,
Right.
many of them are seeing prostitutes or involved with one heavily, or even what I started, butting heads up against about, the mid 2000s was trafficking them. So when you're dealing with a guy with a badge who's actually trafficking women, then uh yeah, we're gonna butt heads with our program in there trying to pull them out to safety, right?
Right. Right.
Because
Exactly.
that's the thing to me, any addiction is when you're doing it against your will. And what I find different in a sense for us is I don't know many people sitting around a crack house pointing a gun at you, forcing you to do dope, you know?
Right.
I mean, we're dealing
That's
with
for sure.
another situation where, yeah, we do have people that are voluntarily doing what they're doing, but sometimes, we're dealing with outside entities that have a
Hmm.
stake also. And so that's
Right.
where it gets really complicated,
Right. Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And that's,
Exactly.
it got so bad, that we had to literally, because then when the internet came about, it became damn near impossible for anybody to even call us because, the phones were tracking everything. So, I mean, I tried for years to find private ways somebody could reach out to us for help. But if they're watching every move you make, then you can't, pick up and make a phone call. So, we're dealing with that added layer of people who may have a financial or emotional interest in us continuing. Like, for example,
Right.
I even found recovery houses owned by the cartels. So you would think that, we would be welcome in every recovery home. No, because especially in Los Angeles and New York, there's some recovery programs where they just want the women clean enough to go back to work. And so they
Right.
view us as a threat. So, I mean, it gets really complicated for us. And but to me,
Yeah.
that's still against our will, whether it is our disease making us do it against our will or whether it's an outside entity, it's still against our will, which is why I
Hmm.
think it's still powerless. And I have a hard time explaining that to people who say there's a difference between the trafficking and the addiction part of this. But I say, but it's still connected with against our will. If we are doing this against our will, then that's where we get into the addiction and the 12
Right.
steps can help because really at that point there is only that surrender and God get me out of here, you
Right.
know, whatever
Right.
it is, whether it's us in the strip club or whether it's somebody, putting us in there, it's still powerless and we still need an outside, higher power to get us the hell back out of this situation.
Right.
And
Right.
this
Exactly.
So it is the same in a sense, the powerlessness. And I know they say, well, it's
Yeah.
different. Well, again, I just go back to it's still when it's against your will, it's the same. And, how many
Right.
times were we out there working in our head going, what the hell are we doing out here? Why are we doing this? I mean, so it's still against our
Hmm.
will. And, I've had to turn back to a higher power for that added layer, so I don't go back to do that. And thinking the
Right.
insanity can be so deep that I can still think it's a viable solution today, even though it's absolutely
Right.
crazy, right?
It
You know,
is. It's totally crazy,
but that's what
you
I
know.
found in our disease is that it can so turn us around to make us convince us that anything sounds sane. And that's the danger of, to me, disconnecting from the program because it's only connected to the program and my sponsor and the groups and and all that stuff that keeps me connected to sanity, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And that's why I have to have people around me also that because we can also surround ourselves with people that will give us a different message. So if I surround myself with people in recovery, that keeps me grounded over here where it's safe.
Right. Right. That's so
And
true.
And I look at
Yeah.
how many of us don't make it out. As I said, in so many ways, you're so much more than the average miracle. You are, because I know so many that don't make it out at all. And here you are
Right.
with a marriage and a career and a family, and you reconciled with your relatives. And I mean, there's so much that who cares about a little extra fat, at this point, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. My husband always tells me I'm beautiful anyway, so that's
Oh,
all I
well,
care about.
I mean, even the fact that you're surrounded with love, that's all that matters, really.
Right. 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 Exactly. And I have a husband who um he works a program still because, he's with me and he has to work a program. Um, you know, um we we get along because of the program, because I'm
Hmm.
still continuing to do the 12 steps. And I think it's so important to emphasize the fact that we don't stop doing the steps when we've got this much amount of time, just
Hmm.
because I have 28 years of sobriety doesn't mean that I still stop working the steps. Once I get through these 12 steps of 12 steps a way out, then I'll have the maintenance of my program doing the 10th, 11th, and 12th. And
Hmm.
and that's how it works for me. I don't know how it works for anybody else, but those were the examples that I had growing up in the program because I
Hmm.
really feel like I grew up in the program. I had to change everything about my life, about how I viewed things, about my own self worth, because I had no self worth when I got here. And I have more of it now, but I still struggle with that. I still
Yeah.
struggle with that part. And I think as human race, we all do, you know,
Hmm.
struggle about, what our worth is and that my work the amount of money I make isn't contingent on who I am or what my worth is, and
Hmm.
I was that way for a long time, but I'm not like that anymore. And I think that was one of the biggest steps that I took because, making money was what I did,
Hmm.
especially when I was out there, I made a lot of money. Okay, I was working at Vaughn's, as a grocery store bagger, but I was so much happier than when I was
Hmm.
making all that money out there, in the life. So nobody knows what we mean by the life unless they've been in the life
Well, it's
themselves,
because it's
you
not just
know.
a behavior or a thing that we're putting, it's literally everything around us, who we're, talking to, everybody around us, how we live, even how we, go to sleep. It's so encompassing. We have to call it a life.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And
That's
that's
very
why,
true.
I so appreciate you doing this interview because, people need to hear. They need to hear that hope is possible. That's why, so this recording of you, I'm going to be sending out to these women that are in, right where you were in those 28-day programs. And, what do you want them to hear?
Yeah, what I want them to hear is like you said, that a new way of life is possible. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it. To have yourself go from having no self-esteem to having, a good bit of self-esteem, as long as you stay, I mean, a lot of people who are in the life, they weren't drug addicts or alcoholics. They were
Mm-hmm.
just in the life. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what you said, earlier, that it's on such a deeper level that we have to go into. And that's what I've had. That's what I've learned to do, is to dig deep to find out, what are my skeletons in the closet? What was the thing that kept me going out there, using and abusing and selling myself? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and it's only through, for me, it's through writing out what's going on with myself today in
Mm-hmm.
comparison to what it was like when I was out there. So yeah, that's what I'd like for them to hear, is that it is possible. But a 12-step program is inescapable. Without the 12 steps, I wouldn't be sober, and I wouldn't want to be, because I wouldn't see that there was any hope for my spirit to change.
Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't even still be here, at all if it
Right.
wasn't for 12-step program.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. And, if somebody wants to talk to you, like I'll privately connect them to you, you
Yeah,
know.
that's fine.
And I do appreciate very much, hearing from you and this message. I know right now a lot of women are really gonna need to hear.
Nice. Well, thank you for asking me. I'm honored, and I'll always do a 12-step request when somebody asks me to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it was so freely given to me. I remember this woman took me out to lunch one time, and I said, "Thank you so much." And she said, "Oh, it's nothing. You just do this for somebody else when it comes a time." I was like, "Okay, I can do
Mm-hmm.
that," and I've done that. Like, I took somebody out to lunch today.
Yeah.
And I picked up the bill because I could. I had
Right.
honest, clean living, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's worth everything to me.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
You're welcome.
Okay,
All right.
I'll
Take care.
disconnect now. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Okay. Bye
I
bye.
love you. Bye bye.
Love you. Bye bye.